Today, we're going to discuss the most powerful psychological methods used to induce deep infatuation in women. However, before we begin, you need to think twice about whether you actually want to employ these tactics. These are not toys, they are heavy psychological tools. The first method relies heavily on the concept of closer and further, or what is essentially emotional contrast. While this mechanism is undeniably effective, it is exceedingly rare to find a man who actually comprehends the mechanics behind it. In the vast majority of cases when men attempt this, they simply look unstable or mentally unwell. Here is the common mistake. A man is communicating normally, then he suddenly falls silent without reason, then reappears as if nothing happened, and then vanishes again. The result? The girl does not fall in love. She simply thinks he has cognitive issues or is a weirdo. In the best-case scenario, she finds him strange. In the worst case, she categorizes him as socially inadequate and moves on. It should be obvious that for emotional contrast to work, there must be something to contrast against. You cannot pull away if you have not first come close. For example, imagine you spent an incredible day together. Perhaps you had an unusual date, or it was her birthday, and you organized something spectacular. You laughed, shared intense emotions, and the connection was peak. Only after a day like that does distancing make sense. However, to avoid looking like a psychopath, your withdrawal requires a logical justification. You might say, I have a massive project starting at work tomorrow, so I'll be off the grid for a couple of days. Or perhaps, I am visiting my parents for the weekend, and the internet reception there is terrible. The degree of this distancing depends entirely on your established rhythm of communication. For those who text 24/7, simply delaying a reply by 10 minutes constitutes distancing. However, if you typically only exchange messages twice a day, then the further phase must look completely different to be felt. There is a very popular, yet profoundly stupid piece of advice often circulated in dating communities: be unavailable. Let us look at this logically. If unavailability was the key to attraction, then hermits living in caves would be the most desirable bachelors on the planet. Yet, they are totally unavailable and remain completely alone. It is obvious that unavailability only functions as a technique when you have already sparked a massive amount of interest. If you have not triggered that initial spark, she will be completely indifferent to your absence. Unavailability itself is not a method of creating love. Now, I know what some of you are thinking. You might ask, wait a minute, why do men chase unavailable women? Why do they flood their DMs, send donations, and buy gifts for women who ignore them? The answer is simple but harsh. A woman creates value primarily through her visual presentation. She posts a photo in a specific pose, or she walks into university lecture hall wearing tight jeans, and instantly, value is created. It takes a man 0 to 3 seconds to scan her face and body proportions and decide, I want that. She does not even need to open her mouth. Her value is established through biological symmetry and aesthetics. She has not even said hello, but your neurochemistry has already shifted simply by looking at her. A man does not have this luxury. Even if you're 6 feet tall, muscular, and handsome, a woman will simply note, yes, he is good looking, and move on. For a man, value is generated almost exclusively through interaction and communication. And communication requires availability. Your basic value is determined by your ability to change her state, to turn a sad girl into a happy one, or a tense girl into a relaxed one. Men do not have the option to simply flex a bicep and have a woman be so impressed that she runs to buy him a gift. A woman, however, can send a slightly provocative photo, and a man might be ready to cycle 1,000 miles through rain and sleet just to see her. Therefore, playing hard to get is a luxury usually reserved for women, not men. This is perhaps the most underhanded yet effective method of inducing infatuation. It is called the needle. The core concept is simple. At the absolute peak of positive emotions, the man abruptly abandons the woman. Let me explain the mechanics of why this works. Imagine you have an old wallet or a watch. It is lying in a drawer somewhere. You never use it, and it holds no current value to you. Suddenly, you lose it. You cannot find it anywhere. In that exact second, the value of that item multiplies tenfold. You begin tearing the apartment apart, overturning furniture, and you cannot sleep because you need to find it. You fall into an obsessive state over something that, just yesterday, you did not care about at all. This technique usually suggests leaving a person without any explanation to maximize the intrigue. I actually experienced this method firsthand when I was a little over 20 years old. I met a very attractive girl, and we had 2 weeks of perfect communication. She was empathetic, kind, and attentive. You know that feeling when you want to open up and tell someone things you have never told anyone else? It was a transcendent level of sincerity. She was one of the few people in my life with whom I felt there were absolutely no secrets. Then, on the day we had a date scheduled, she did not show up. Her phone was switched off. I called the next day, and a week later, and 2 weeks later. Her profile on the dating site where we met was deleted. When I finally found her landline number and called, her mother told me that no such girl lived in that apartment. At first, I was in a stupor. Then, my brain began replaying our last conversation on an endless loop. My mind generated 100 theories for every single word she had said, but I had no confirmation for any of them. To this day, I do not know what actually happened. She did not seem like a scammer. I had nothing to steal. I'm not sure she was married, as she was only 19. Maybe her mother forbade her from seeing me, but that does not explain deleting her profile and throwing away her SIM card. It was definitely not a prank. By that age, I had decent experience with people. I have seen many actresses, and none could play a role that naturally. I still did not know what it was. If you have any theories, feel free to share them in the comments. There's another lesser-known but highly effective method that could be described as somewhat feminine in nature, as men rarely use it. It is the method of competition. Here is how it works. You casually mention a third party, a friend, a colleague, or a neighbor. It does not matter who, only that you talk about them. You might say, Valera created such an amazing presentation today that the whole office was in shock. Or Valera answered the director so boldly yesterday that everyone's jaw dropped. Or Valera bought a new car and says he is buying an apartment next year. Without realizing it, the girl begins to compete with a person she has never even met. If her birthday is coming up in a week, she might start thinking, I wonder what Valera would have given him. Or what would Valera say in this situation? Eventually, you reach a point where you realize you cannot win a duel against Valera because he is a phantom. After months of sparring with this invisible rival, the partner feels broken and unworthy. And the worst part is, you have no right to be angry at Valera. He has done nothing wrong. He simply exists. Women use this on men all the time, but since men rarely talk about their female friends in this way, it is an underutilized tactic in the male arsenal. The next method is called mirroring. This is when a man copies a woman's speech tempo, her filler words, her emotional amplitude, and her worldview. If she says, I love cats, you say, I adore cats. If she says, I hate the heat, you say, that is exactly why I have always wanted to live somewhere in Scandinavia. The result is a feeling of mystical kinship. The girl thinks, we are so alike. It must be fate. By the time a month passes and the man starts behaving like his true self, it no longer matters because she is already in love. However, competent mirroring requires intelligence. You cannot just be a parrot. If she says 5 things and you simply reply, I think so too, to all of them, that is not mirroring. That is sycophancy. It is a pathetic attempt to please. For example, if she asks, do you love cats? A weak answer sounds unsure. Well, yeah, I like them. A smart, mirrored answer sounds like this. Yes, I love them. I had a cat named Merzik for 10 years. He passed away last year. Your voice must be confident, and your answer must contain specific details to make the lie, or the mirroring, believable. This is a method I have encountered once in my life. It involves the partner slowly isolating you from your environment. She might say, your friend Nikita really envies you. Do you not see it? Seriously? Wow, you are so naive. Be careful with him. I would not trust him if I were you. Then later, your friend Valera is just using you. You should not tolerate that. Or, Did you notice that your mother is strangely jealous of me? In this way, the woman gradually, not all at once, discredits everyone who is close to you. She pours oil on the fire until the man starts quarreling with everyone except her. Eventually, no one is left in his life but her, and consequently, her significance to him grows exponentially because she is his entire world. The final toxic method is the praise trap. This is when a man begins to praise the girl constantly and excessively for every little thing. This continues for a week, maybe 2 or 3, and then the praise is abruptly cut off. As a result, the girl begins trying to create reasons to be praised again. She starts doing nice things and investing more and more into the relationship to get that validation back. Before she knows it, she has invested so much that she is in a state of deep attachment. You have probably noticed that almost all these methods are ethically dubious. There is no kind way to force someone to obsess over you. Why? Because the state of being in love in this obsessive sense is not a norm. It is a pathology. People do not obsess over good people. At best, they feel a warm sympathy toward them. By the time I was 20, I had fully mastered the mechanics of making women fall in love. I cannot say I had a 10 out of 10 success rate, but 8 out of 10 was easy. However, I quickly realized that I did not want to do nasty things. Let us say I make a girl fall in love with me using these tricks. What do I do with her then? If you manipulate someone into binding themselves to you, you eventually feel a burden of responsibility for that person. So, from that day on, I stopped applying these techniques. And do you know what the most surprising thing was? Women began to fall in love even harder. I believe women can sense power held in reserve. You have the ability to create harsh emotional contrast, but you choose not to. You could disappear, ignore her, and make her suffer, but you stay. You are dangerous, yet you choose to be safe. You know you could wound her, but you refrain. You have good intentions, but theoretically, you could put her through absolute turbulence. It is analogous to sitting in a cafe with a loaded gun on the table. You do not wave it around or threaten anyone. It just sits there, creating a very specific mood for the conversation. After a short time, the woman realizes that this man could morally crush her in 2 days, but instead, he feeds her cake. I believe this is the highest level of male attractiveness. It is essential to know about these manipulations and understand how they work, primarily so you could defend yourself. But running around trying to trick women into loving you is unnecessary. A young man joins a boxing gym not to beat up random people on the street, but to ensure he does not get beaten up and so he can protect the weak. Friends, if you enjoy content in this format and want to support the creation of more videos like this, please take a moment to hit the like button. Share this content with a friend who might need a reality check, or watch the video again to let the algorithms know it is valuable. Let's try to push this video up the rankings together. And if you're looking for more in-depth knowledge on relationships and psychology, check the description box below for further resources.